Hi, this is Randall Schwartz, host of Floss Weekly. This week, Aaron Newcomb joins me to talk about the Joget Workflow, which takes all your paperwork and eliminates it. Well, that sounds like fun. You'll want to hear about this, so stay tuned.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Floss Weekly is provided by Cachefly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Floss Weekly with Randall Schwartz and Aaron Newcomb. Episode 157 for March 16th, 2011. Joget Workflow. Floss Weekly is brought to you by MailRoute. MailRoute protects you from spam and viruses. Visit mailroute.info for a 10% discount for the life of your account. It's time for Floss Weekly, the show about free, libre, open source software. I am your host, Randall Schwartz, Merlin at Stunhenge.com, trying as often as I can to get in front of the mic, get in front of the camera, and talk to you about open source software that I find interesting, projects, people, movers, shakers, projects you probably haven't heard of, which is the most fun for me because it means I can bring in a whole new audience to a whole lot of really cool ideas and projects and stuff. If you're watching the video, you can see that once again, yes, I'm here with the big blue Yeti mic, and for those of you listening, you can probably tell the richness of the tones and stuff like that. So that's really nice. And for those of you who are looking behind me on the video, that's the Mount Hood stained glass that I'm so happy and proud of and will be going away soon. Still, not quite yet. But I should stop talking and bring in my co-host. Welcome back to the show, Aaron.
Yep. Good to be back again. Always glad to be here.
And you have the much better mic because, of course, you're in the Twit cottage and I'm not. I'm back at my house, so that's the way that works. I don't know if you can see on the camera, too, Aaron. I'm a little tanner than normal because last week was a cruise, and I keep forgetting that, you know, even if there's clouds, there's still a lot of sun coming through, so I keep getting redder and redder on every one of these things. So if you're looking at the video and I look a little bit off color, it really is me. It's what I look like in real life here.
I noticed that. I wasn't sure if you were tan or you just been drinking this morning.
I try not to drink before 10 a.m. So, it's 10:46, time to get going. It's 5 o'clock somewhere, as we often say.
There you go.
No drinking this morning. Not yet, anyway. Maybe right after this, given how crazy this one's been. I want to bring on talk about today's guest, which is really an interesting project. It looks like a big scoped project, you know, with enterprise level stuff. It's called the Joget or Yoget, one of those. I don't quite know which. We'll have to figure out which one that is, but when in the show. But it's basically a workflow manager. And workflow means something where you have, you know, somebody fills out a form and somebody else has to approve it, and then somebody else probably has to double approve it, and then it needs like triple redundant approval, and then finally the thing actually gets done, you know, like a typical large organization would have. And it looks like this thing's going to be able to automate that. We have a couple guys. We have Michael Yap, who's the CEO of the Joget company, I think it is, Joget Workflow, based out of Sunnyvale. So we'll talk to him about how this all fits together. And all the way from someplace across the international date line, we have Tien-Soon Law, who is one of the community leaders, technical consultant of the Joget Workflow. So we're going to bring them both on in a few minutes. First off, though, I want to say, just, you know, a lot of stuff's happened in real time over the last week since the last show, and I just want to say my thoughts and prayers go out to those people in Japan who are enduring this ongoing disaster. And it's bad enough to have like a Katrina or a 3 Mile Island or a snowpocalypse, but to have them all at once, I'm sure it's going to get worse before it gets better. And I just wanted to say, my thoughts and prayers going out to you guys. And also what I have to say is that I have a sponsor for this week's show. I love this. This is great. So our sponsor is mailroute.info, and I appreciate that because I'm actually now a user, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But what it says here for me to say is businesses of every size use MailRoute. One user, 50,000 users, it doesn't matter. MailRoute will protect you from spam and viruses and simplify your life and make your email usable again. MailRoute is a secure hosted service that filters viruses and spam for companies of any size. Whether you're a single user or a company with tens of thousands of employees, MailRoute can eliminate viruses and spam, reduce the load on your email server, lower your costs, and make your email usable again. Typical MailRoute customers see a 95% reduction in their inbound email volume with virtually no false positives. Leo loves MailRoute. He's been using the service for his domains for more than 6 years, and MailRoute has been his top choice for spam and virus filtering all along. And because of how much Leo was actually aiming for having MailRoute and talking about how great it was, I decided also, since I was reading this ad copy over and over again, that I would also send it from MailRoute. Did it just a few weeks ago. I tell you, everything that I was doing internally in my servers are now pushed off. So I don't even get the email at my servers anymore. They're doing all the filtering for me. They're taking care of that. And they're also doing things I couldn't do just being one server. You can look and see a pattern across all their machines and everything and stuff I can't do at all. So I'm really appreciating what MailRoute does for me. I'm a happy customer already. It was really easy to set up. So check it out. There's nothing easier for mail filtering than MailRoute. There's no hardware or software to install. You just sign up with MailRoute. You have to change your MX record, so it's a little technical, a little geeky, but if you have MX records for your domain, you simply point them at them instead of you, and then start your mail flowing through them, and then do all the work for you. So mailroute.info, sign up. Check out mailroute.info, because as a Twit listener, you're going to receive a 10% discount for the life of your account. This is not just a simple one-month deal. You get 10% off for the life of your account. Small business accounts start at $2 per user per month for 10 users. And because the demand from the Twit Army, MailRoute also has a new service for individual users as well, less than $30 per user per year for single users. Visit mailroute.info and sign up with the email filtering service that Tom and Leo and Randall use. And now, do you have anything to say about our guests before we bring them on?
Well, I do. I have a little bit of exposure to this just because I've been involved with enterprise IT for quite a while. So I've seen workflow. I've seen it when it works well. I've seen it when it doesn't work well. So I'm kind of interested to see what the Joget folks bring to the equation that's maybe a little different than what I've seen in the past.
Yeah, it's such a complex field, and I know there's a lot of enterprise people in this area, and I know there's some open source solutions for it, but it'll be interesting to see what they're bringing to the picture. So I'm sure we're going to ask a lot of questions about that. So without further ado, let's go ahead and bring on our guests. I guess we're speaking to one Michael Yap from somewhere in the Bay Area. Hello, Michael.
Hi, Randall. How are you?
I'm doing well, and good to see you on the show. Glad we finally got a chance to talk to you about your project. But before we do that, let's go ahead and bring on a very far away person from across the timeline, the international date line, whatever that thing's called out there. We've got, see if I can pronounce this right, Tiansun La. Can you say hi?
Hi. It's a good night to me at the moment. And
yes.
I'm usually living in Kuala Lumpur, one of the cities in Southeast Asia. It will take me about 20 hours to fly to the Bay Area. But
we won't have you do that through the magic of Skype. Through the magic of Skype, we'll just bring you on this way, right? Yes.
Yeah. But it seems the internet connection is not quite good at the moment. So, yeah, it's okay. Just go ahead with that.
Yeah, we're just gonna go. We're just gonna run with it because that's how we are here. We're just work around all the issues and work on all the magic there. So, so at the beginning of the show, I gave a kind of a brief 30-second overview of what the I believe it's Joget Workflow is all about. But I'm sure I did a horrible job. So, Michael, why don't you start by first explaining the problem that you're trying to solve with this project, and then explain how Joget Workflow actually makes it work.
Well, to explain the problem, I'm just going to have to take you back a long way to why we are actually doing what we're doing now. Joget itself is a very, very young organization. It's a very young project generally. I think it's been around for 15, 16 months, but the team behind Joget go back a long way. About 10 years ago, we came together and we founded a different technology startup, which we called the Media Shop. It's kind of weird because we didn't really do media and we weren't really a shop, but you know, we were geeks and advertising wasn't our thing. But in any case, we took the Media Shop, or TMS, we grew that to a regional entity, we grew it globally, and we finally took it public. Personally, I spent 8 years doing that, and you know, when I left the company, it was an enterprise level systems integrator dealing with customs development, and that's always been our tradition. It's been very steeped in software development. We've built everything from enterprise software to .com plays to web application development frameworks, and this was back in a time where there were very few web application development frameworks in the early 2000s. I think Struts was popular and Tapestry was around. Hibernate was barely in early alpha. So that's where we've come from, and when you spend 8 years doing something, and you tend to be very intimately acquainted with everything that you feel is wrong with the industry generally. And the reality of the fact is most customs development these days deal with process automation. It's a very big term, but the reality it's actually a very simple thing that most people do, well, everyone does right now. You know, if you implement a document management system or an HR process, you're essentially doing process automation. You're using technology to automate your processes, and that's what it means. And the bulk of custom development revolves around that area, and that's exactly what Joget is meant to do. It's an application builder. It makes it easy, it makes it fast for anyone to build web applications or process-driven web applications.
Now, so let me understand here. So process-driven web applications, I mean, maybe you could say that almost everything is that. I mean, if I'm going to go, say, book an airline ticket or a rental car, I did a lot of that yesterday, so it's fresh in my mind. There's certainly a process you have to go through of figuring out what's available and then sorting through the possible options and seeing how they coordinate with each other and then saying, is this the right price? I want to pay for this and so on. So maybe everything really is a web app or is a process application. But I think what you're talking about is the more specific kind when it's not just one person kind of going through a few steps. It's actually something complex that may involve many people or many departments. So it's more about enterprise level, right?
Well, it doesn't necessarily need to be enterprise software. For instance, if you were a WordPress developer and you wanted to come back with a feedback module. So, the way it works is someone online anonymously will post a feedback. You will want some sort of notification. Once that comes to you, you get to do something with it, maybe issue a response. Something that simple is also processed. So long as there are different roles involved and, there are different processes at different times and different entities involved.
Okay, so it really could be for something as small. Because as I'm reading through the documentation, I'm seeing that this looks huge. This looks like, if I don't have 50 people using this, it doesn't make any sense at all. Right. But you're saying that maybe even I, as this individual web developer building just a little sort of interaction site, might even use this stuff then.
Absolutely. And I think as we go along this interview, as we approach how we are looking at engaging the communities, you will see a lot of our efforts is actually... Well, it's actually gauged towards the run-of-the-mill developers, even your SMEs, people who work with, a Drupal or a WordPress or a Joomla. That applies to them as well. So long as there's application development involved, it will probably apply.
Okay, because as an example here, maybe let's bring it back to a scale maybe that actually would apply to me within the next month or two. Right. One of my clients is Insight Cruises, the guys that put on the technical conferences 7 or 8 weeks a year that takes me so much time away from here, actually. And they're looking at having me rebuild the booking engine. So when somebody comes to the site, there's a sequence of things they have to go through. And if they have like a particular choice at one place where, okay, they're going to have like 4 people in the room instead of 2 people, I need to ask more questions and get all the details brought out. So this is something actually I could use Joget for.
Absolutely. I've actually got a scenario that's a little closer to home as far as you're concerned. Not too sure how the majority of your interviewees go through it, but I basically I sent you a mail or I posted something on a Google Doc someplace. I really can't remember. It was a while ago. But that could be a process to you as well. All you need to do is create an online form. You can do it in two minutes. Create an online form with Joget. When someone fills it up, it goes through a process, whatever the process is that you define.
So in other words, like when I put out a request on these shows, they say, please, if you want to guest on the show, go to this webpage or actually email me with the suggestion. Of course, people email me the project. They never email the project leader like I tell them to. But let's say we actually worked it out where they could email the project leader with a link that just says, here, go sign up and give me some info about what you are. I would get that as part of a workflow and then say, now you need to go look at my calendar to see when you want to actually be on. But I could have done all this inside Joget then too, right?
Absolutely. Or you could have written a plugin that looks into your calendar and tells them what the available dates are. It's entirely possible.
Wow. Okay, so it does sound a little bit more at home. So what's your relationship to the project? You're the CEO, I guess?
I am the CEO. I'm also very much a geek at heart. So I'm most comfortable when I'm crunching code, actually. And the most of us are actually engineers, and it gives us a very deep sense of appreciation as far as software development is concerned, and a lot of pains that people go through. For instance, let's just take the scenario that we went through, just automating your interviewing process, just scheduling people to do this show. It's a very simple thing if you think about it as far as application development is concerned. It's not terribly complex, but to build it A and to maintain it B after usually takes you a lot more time than you should be spending on it. And that's exactly why Joget came about.
Very cool. And so Tiansun, what's your relationship to the project, just so we can get that in the feed here?
Right. My main scope in this project is more on the consulting services, and at the same time also the main behind the Twitter account for Joget Workflow. So it's very much on the social media evangelizing as well. So, but as of services, it's mainly on the technical consulting part.
Cool.
If I can paraphrase that, what he does, he travels the globes, he gives seminars, and he breaks a lot of hearts.
So, guys, I'm just still trying to make sure that I have a handle on it and our audience does. So you mentioned a few of them, but who are the main competitors here? What closed source or even other open source applications are in this same space that you're working in?
Well, the thing is, workflow is a very general space. So we had to brand ourselves in a particular niche, so we chose workflow. The reality of the fact is the majority of the workflow players deal a lot with systems workflow as opposed to human-driven applications. So, for instance, if you were writing web services and I was writing web services and we needed some way to make that make sense or organize it, that's how ESBs came about. So the majority of them are actually targeted towards things that the human being doesn't see. And that's a great market, but it's just not a market that we're particularly interested in. At the end of the day, we want to build human-driven workflow, things that human beings see and interact with. And there are players doing this as well, but I think you have to remember the fact that it wasn't too long ago that we were in different shoes, and we were the ones evaluating these projects, evaluating these products for use in our organization, and we came across a lot of challenges simply because most of these products were built not with application development in mind, but with workflow specifically, and that's what we're trying to shy away from. Workflow and BPM in general, it is a market, it solves a specific need, but if you take application development or software development in a broad sense, there are many places where it falls short, and we're hoping to bridge those gaps.
So can you give us maybe some more examples of where Joget is used? Who's using it? You don't even have to mention any company names if that's not kosher. But
sure.
Give us some examples. Like, what have companies done with it? Where have they implemented it? Where might we have seen it around the interwebs?
Okay, I didn't ask anyone for permission, so I'm not going to mention names, but our list of adopters currently range anywhere from Fortune 1000 companies to large telecommunication companies to small startups. We have Fortune 500 companies using us to build their entire suite of internal processes, basically the web apps that power their entire internal organization. They use it to do that. We also have people who have online HR services, online publishing services. They use Joget as a fundamental platform to build their entire business offerings. Mm-hmm. And one of the examples that I like to do is I like to give this particular demo. It's a lot of fun. We can actually build a full-fledged call center application. We can do it in 5 minutes with the use of plugin. It has full telephony integration through a web app. You'll send text messages and all that kind of stuff. And it's a lot of fun and it's cool. But I think the best part about that is if you were a Drupal developer or a WordPress developer, BPM technologies typically won't be something that applies to you in a general sense. But where Joget is concerned, once you've built that application, you can use our Drupal or WordPress plugin and the entire application fits seamlessly into your site. I think when you deal with application development, you have to appreciate the fact that a lot of it is done in specific contexts, in specific platforms, in specific technologies. And if we are sincere about wanting to help developers do that, we need to respect those boundaries and fit into them.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. I mean, how does Joget actually fit in with these various... I'm assuming you've made it easy for folks to incorporate this into their platform, whatever platform they're using. But talk about that. How do you do that? Do you have specific plugins for each platform, or is it how does it integrate?
There are specific plugins for each platform. I think the best part about Joget is we started off with this intention in mind, so it wasn't something that was an afterthought or we didn't have to redesign it. The entire product is actually built on a plugin architecture. So virtually everything is a plugin. And the stuff that we've written for WordPress, for Drupals, all those are open source. They're built on open APIs that we expose anyway. So we're not the only ones who can do it. It's just that I was messing around, so we decided to. So as far as a WordPress user or a Drupal user or something along those lines is concerned, you build your stuff on Joget, you apply the WordPress plugins in Joget, and you will communicate with your WordPress seamlessly. Do your user negotiations, your single sign-on, everything that needs to be done. And when it shows up on your site, that's just all you need to do. Yeah.
Michael, you're breaking up just a little bit, so just keep that in mind. Make sure you hold that mic up before I ask the next question. what do I need from a technology? I usually like to talk about the integration and the technology when we talk about these various platforms. I mean, what do I need from a technology standpoint to make this work? Do I need a huge server to run this on? I'm guessing that I can run this on a separate server somewhere in my environment, and I'm just going to point to it over the Ethernet network or whatever I'm attached to. I can point to it separately, and all the calls go to a separate server, and then they come back to the application server somehow.
Yes, that's exactly how it works. It's not really a SaaS play. It's not really a service. It's a product itself. You download everything and you can choose to host it. But we don't even host it even if you wanted to. So basically, it is a product. It is a web application. You install it on a server somewhere, and you have access to it through any web browser. And the best part about Joget is you build the application once, and it will actually do all the necessary translations between any web browser, mobile devices. So once again, if we've built application, let's say we've built an application for Randall for his his interview process thing. We just have to build it once, and any mobile user will have access to it.
Oh, that's great, because I keep telling developers on this show, when we talk to them and out in the, just when I'm at conferences and stuff, I always try to tell them, make sure that when you make these applications, make them mobile friendly, because that's going to hugely increase people's desire to adopt these. If they can do it once, like you say, and make it available on mobile platforms, that's great. And of course, we've seen a lot. Anyone that's used a smartphone, not so much with the feature phones, but now with smartphones becoming more and more popular, becoming less and less expensive and more available for the general public, we've seen these types of web forms and so on become much more pervasive, because it's very easy now to interact with these forms where you have a virtual keyboard or in some cases a real keyboard on your phone. You can actually do it. So I think that having that feature is fantastic. Is it when you say that they're available for mobile devices? How are you making that possible? Is it through a mobile optimized web platform, or are you actually enabling people to create applications that they can then put on either an Android or a Apple iPhone?
Well, you can certainly create those applications if you wanted to. It doesn't come out of the box. So mobile ready means there is a templating layer that does our rendering for us. And we do have a mobile optimized version whenever you access it through a mobile device. But as far as mobile clients are concerned, once again, we work on an open API. So the sky's the limit. Whatever you want to build.
Yeah, and then maybe this is a question for Tensoon as well. I don't know, but I know that you said you do consulting, so I'm just kind of curious. Is there a support? Is that how you're making money with this? Is by offering support and integration assistance?
Yes, exactly. There are actually a few types of channels that we can get some profits in a way. One of the main one is consulting services. Second one is the training. And we do also sell some of the plugins for enterprises, which we actually sell in our marketplace. The URL is actually marketplace.joget.org. And that's a place that we do showcase some of the enterprise plugins that we have. And one of the most sellable plugin at the moment is actually the LDAP plugin that allows people to integrate into the LDAP server as the directory implementation.
So, are all of the plugins available for free as well, just not supported, or are the enterprise versions actually you can't get it any other way but to pay for it?
Yeah. There are some plugins which are available for communities, and there are some that we actually develop ourselves and reserve for the enterprise subscribers.
Okay.
So for the enterprise plugins, the source codes are not available publicly.
Right. So I'm assuming, though, that the platform is open enough that if I wanted to do this completely, free as in beer, I could probably develop those plugins myself, right, using the code that's already available.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's right.
I think one of the intentions of the Joget Marketplace is also to allow our adopters to have some form of monetization. So if you've been developing stuff on it and it's cool and you think a lot of people will reuse it, by all means sell it there. And it's yours, so sell it for whatever you want.
This is really interesting so far. I'm still trying to see, though, what am I doing to actually interact with this? I saw some of the demo videos, and it looked like all of your interaction, or primary part of your interaction, is web-based. In order to, say, build the forms or design the workflow and everything, you're basically interacting with sort of a web-based interface. Is that? Am I getting the right impression?
It is, and it's done intentionally so for ease of use. We're not big fans of having to install clients and to build it from there. It's very counterproductive. It's actually a client in itself that we run through WebStart. So everything actually runs off your browser. So in order to build an application, realistically what you need is a web browser. That's all you need.
Well, that always scares me a little bit, and I feel a little weird saying this coming from the Smalltalk world where, of course, Smalltalk has its own independent editor and everything, and I say it's always how cool that is, but there's all the downside of that, which is that when I have to use a different interface system, I don't get the same version controlling things that I might have as a corporate standard. I don't get the same sort of, special key bindings that I have on Emacs for my own editing capability. Do you get any kind of pushback that you have to build everything through your customized editors?
Oh, if you're talking about building customized plugins, then you can use whatever editor you want. As far as integration options is concerned, it ranges anywhere from web-neutral technologies like REST calls and JSON APIs to full-fledged OSGI plugins. So if you are a developer, you want to write a really cool plugin, you can actually do that through whatever IDE you want, package it according to OSGI standards, and then deploy it on Joget.
But does that even mean I could replace the use of that thing that you could draw that says step 1, step 2, step 3 with my own editor?
Well, the editor is actually just a workflow designer. What it does, it helps you design your workflow. It spits out XPDL, basically. XPDL is one of the standards in BPM. So if you wanted to use a different editor that also spits out XPDL, then you can conceivably do that.
Oh, okay. So if I happen to have my favorite XPDL editor, I don't even know what that would look like, but I'm sure there's actually an Emacs mode for it. But, but yeah. So it's anyway. Or I could write a Perl script that would probably convert whatever I wanted to that. So I could actually interact with that. Okay. Well, but the basic way that you believe most people are interacting with this is sort of your design idea is that there's some interaction directly with your workflow editor, some interaction directly with your form builder. How many other interfaces are there? There was like the user management console and a couple other things.
Right. As far as managing the application is concerned, it can either go through Joget. And once again, everything is plugin based. So for instance, if I wanted to not use Joget's user management, I wanted to use LDAPs, just plug in a plugin and you can do it from there. Joget will communicate with it seamlessly. So as far as managing the application is concerned, managing your app, your processes and your workflows, everything happens through the Joget console as well. So if you are talking about custom development, if you want to build custom plugins, then you can build it from wherever you want, however you want, so long as it's OSGI compliant according to our interfaces, then you can deploy it on Joget.
All right, so now let's go back one more step and go. Let's see how this would actually work. And if I wanted to build it for, say, the interview process, just like you said, so I would install Joget. And get it working somewhere. I would create my first sort of interface somehow with a form builder of some kind, and I would think about my workflow. It would go from here to here to here.
Right.
And then so all that as I'm doing that, I saw this. You push the deploy button a lot. So as soon as that's deployed, I have a URL that I can hand somebody, and they can come right in and start using it.
Absolutely.
Okay, well that's simpler than I thought.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, I'm not too sure if you want to hand someone a URL. I'm sure you have a site somewhere. I'm sure you want the form or the process to be in your site somewhere. So instead of handing someone the URL, maybe you want to embed that process in your site and give them the URL to your site instead.
Ah, okay. Well, actually, there's not a site like that for Floss Weekly yet because it's
oh
all
wow,
be part of
we
this.
need to get you one.
Oh no! It's. I'm sure that there's probably somebody screaming at the cottage right now saying we could do that for you. You just haven't asked. So anyway, but so I would have Joget installed there, and when people go to twit.tv/floss, they would see maybe a corner of it would be the suggest a guest form or something, and then it would walk you through there. So it would actually be installed on the servers that run twit.tv then, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'm starting to make sense of this. Now, what kinds of meta controls do you have? In other words, how do you control who can change the process?
Well, the default user, matrix is actually just based on administrator and users. So you can either create processes or you can't, or you can use processes. The actual controls within the processes that you build specifically really depends on the kind of process it is. So what happens when you define applications or workflows is you need to first figure out what are the roles involved. You associate roles to actual groups or users or groups of users. And so as far as individual control is concerned for individual applications that you build, it really, really depends on you and your use case. So that there isn't a hard and fast rule to that.
Okay, so I would probably have all the TWiT hosts, all the Floss Weekly hosts have like administration capability, or maybe it was just me because I'm probably the only one I want people messing with the workflow.
Right.
But so I would have the hosts all be in one group though, as being like approvers of guest orientation and things like that. But then have like the public just have a certain level of access to some parts of the process. Then, right?
Sure. As far as your process, well, I have no idea what your process is like. I'm just assuming, but let's just go along the lines of someone's going to submit a request. And then you have approvers that will see it. Once they approve, it comes up to you. You can either choose to say yes or no. If you say no, then everyone else down the line gets informed. If you say yes, then someone needs to process that and make an appointment. Or maybe that happens automatically, whatever. So what happens is when you design your workflow, you design it with those roles in mind. And those roles are very abstract, and you can either assign them to groups or users or groups of users. So, for instance, if FLOSS is, running on an LDAP, you would probably want to hook that up with whatever you've built in Joget.
Now, what do you see the biggest barrier to adoption for something like this? I mean, when people look at this at first and they go, this might work for us, but my God, it really needs feature X before we can move forward. And what are some of those feature X's that you get pushback on?
Actually, the best part about this is whatever feature X you want, you can kind of build them yourself because everything is a plugin. I'm not exaggerating by saying this. Everything is a plugin. It could be a plugin that completely overrides your security matrix, or it could be a plugin that basically is a field in the form. It could be that small. So, anything that you want, you can potentially build. But coming back to the barrier of entry, I suppose one of the biggest challenges is in mindset. A lot of hackers tend to be very comfortable with hacking out code, whether or not it's efficient, whether or not that's the best way to do it, really is beside the point. That really is their comfort zone. So even with a technology like that makes it so much easier for them to do it. There's a lot of resistance to pick up new technology. I suppose the feeling of a loss of control is very prevalent for most geeks. And, I'm a geek myself, so I can certainly understand that. But the way we get around doing this is to enlarge our base as much as it's possible. So whatever plugins that can be built, we'll go ahead and do that. And we certainly encourage a lot of our adopters and our communities to go ahead and do that as well. So when the features become so rich that it makes it's a no-brainer for you to adopt a technology like that, I suppose those resistance will go away.
So let's talk a little bit about the technology. Because we haven't actually mentioned what any of this is written in, or what kind of languages you need to use to talk to the API. So let's get a little geeky here and go. So what's it written in, and maybe how many lines of code is it, and how long has the code base been in development?
I think it's been in development for 15 months now. It's written entirely on a J2E stack, so we're all very Java people. We don't really know how many lines of codes, but I believe our Sona should be public. If it's not, someone will be furiously pinging me on my IM right about now. It's not doing that, so I'm guessing I'm right.
Okay.
But the entire code base is completely available for your download. So as far as integration option, well, the product is built on J2E platform, but as far as integration option is concerned, we try to be as web neutral as we possibly can. So you could be a Python guy or a PHP guy. It really doesn't matter because a lot of this goes through.
How about Perl? How about Perl?
You can do that too. Sure, any web technology. Right. Well, beyond web technologies, you can still do that. If you can make use of JSON APIs or REST calls and stuff like that, it'll still work for you. But if you want to build really, really fundamental, really big, complex plugins, we advise you to go through the OSGI plugins and build it on Java.
Okay, that makes sense. So in order to add to this, I will probably need to know some technologies like that. And just to address your other comment, though, it's yes, if you have something that makes the task at hand simpler. My experience of that, whenever somebody tells me there's something that's going to make my tasks simpler, I always know, yes, but there is a cost to figure out the tool in the first place, and I have to be able to pay that up front and get enough times using it to be able to justify the simpler tool down the road. Now, I suppose you've done everything you can to make the upfront cost simpler, but is there a typical time to deploy that somebody really, probably can't put anything out for like at least a month or two after getting their hands on this?
Well, I really hope that's not the case. If it was, then we're not doing our job very well.
Okay.
So, but the typical time to deploy really depends on the familiarity with technology generally, as far as the adopter is concerned. I've seen people go into production mode within a week, having built whatever processes they want, and then a lot of adopters actually use Joget as a fundamental layer in their technology platform. So those kind of exercises typically take a lot longer because they require a lot more integration, a lot more consideration, I suppose. If you're building a product or a service that is meant to power your business, you probably want to do a lot of strategizing about how best to fit the solution in, no matter how good it is. So it really depends on the use case. If you're looking to build processes and you want to be up and running, you want it on your website and you want it now, then it could be really, really quick. Just a couple of days will take. But if you're planning to use Joget as a layer of technology that will power a lot of what you do in the future, then you might probably want to stand back a little bit and just strategize. And that might take anywhere from a couple of weeks to a couple of months, really. It really depends on the use case.
So how about capacity planning on this? Is there has this been scaled to, say, maybe being the central HR form for a 5,000 person company, and like how many hits per second does that actually involve, and how much hardware you need to take care of that?
There is capacity planning. You have to remember a lot of our adopters are actually quite enterprise in nature, which is surprising because that wasn't really our target market in the first place. But a lot of them actually came on board, and in an enterprise environment you have, well, exactly what you said, thousands of concurrent users and so on and so forth. It seems to be holding up pretty well, actually. We've tried as much as possible to be faithful to a lot of scaling technologies that Java does provide. We are big fans of technology. We've been doing this for a while now. So yeah, as far as scaling options are concerned, whatever you have in your typical web app is certainly available to you here.
Okay, so let's get practical here again. So let's say I've got a company, I don't know, some random company that might have maybe like 100 developers, 100 or 150 developers that have to go through various workflows. Like if we wanted to replace their bug tracking system with something like this, because it actually sounds like that might be something that's close to this. And so they're going to probably be, working on simultaneously 200 or 300 bugs live, but have like a backlog of 2,000 or 3,000 bugs, or maybe 10 times that much. Right. Would one little server over in the corner do it for that size of group, or are you going to have like 10 machines that all kind of have some cross connections so they can fail over and stuff?
Well, it really depends on the scenario, and it really depends on the kind of load that you're talking about. But I think what I'm trying to get at is the fact that this scales horizontally. We don't tie into any particular vendor, so when you download the product, it comes bundled with Tomcat and MySQL simply because it's free. If you wanted to, upsize that to, say, an Oracle, that's certainly doable. We're writing on Hibernate, I believe. It's either Hibernate or JPI. I probably should know this, actually. But it's writing on an OR platform. So basically, you can just remap it to any database you want. You can cluster your application servers. It doesn't need to be Tomcat. If you want to do it any way or any other vendors, you can do that too. So there is no hard and fast rule on exactly what's required. It really depends on your situation. But however you need to scale in a traditional sense, all those options are available to you.
Okay, and one other thing that's just coming to mind here. How much of deployments of Joget are brand new processes that weren't being handled some other way, and how much of this is transition? And if there's a lot of transition from some previous existing process, what's been your biggest complaints from or maybe even praises from people who are doing that sort of work?
Well, I don't really know exactly how much are brand new, how much are ported over, but I think one of the biggest value as far as Joget is concerned is, software development is never purely about building something. If you take a long view on it, it's about what you need to do to maintain it after it's built, and that's usually where the pain point comes in. You can have someone build something, it could be really cool and work for a little while. If the guy leaves, you're not in a good situation. I almost said something I'd regret there. But yeah. But as far as Joget's concerned, why we believe it makes a lot of difference to a lot of organizations who want to do this is because not only do you get to build it fast, maintenance, it's not a huge issue. And I want to bring us back to the marketplace a little bit, and it's quite interesting that you brought it up because I was kind of hoping someone would take up this project so that I don't have to. But bug tracking system sounds like a really good fit. for what Joget does. I would love it if one of our adopters came along and built a really cool bug tracking process and then decides to sell it on the marketplace. And the best part about that is if you wanted a bug tracking system, you could buy whatever he has put up and tweak it to suit your needs. And you don't really need to wade through his technological backlog or his legacy codes. It should be very, very easy for you to tailor it to your organization.
Well, that's why I asked about the bug tracking system, because that's one of those things that in a technical organization, it always seems to be the weirdest combinations of things. There's the initial capture, which is like weird because you have to figure out, well, this could be a bug that relates to a screen dump, or this could be a bug that relates to some line of code that I know is wrong, or this could be a bug driven by product marketing ideas. And so you have to somehow capture, 17 different ways the information can come in. And then invariably you have to manage priorities on it. You have to manage approvals of the result. We have to probably manage 2 levels of approvals because it's probably the release manager as well as the sort of the local engineer, the manager that's going to be able to release off on it. And it's one of these things that never gets done very well. And I hate to say that because, there's some really good tools out there. I mean, in the Perl community, we have RT and a bunch of other things are out there that are sort of trying to cover this area. But everything seems to be a little messed up about this. I'm wondering if, starting with Joget or something, we could probably get something interesting done. I'm just speculating, of course. That's what I do.
I would send you a few T-shirts if you decide to champion that cause, actually. But I think what you've touched on is the pain point itself, the nature of processes. Because when you deal with processes, it's something that's very intimate to each organization. And the reality of the fact is I don't think any organization works the exact same way. If you put 2 companies together, the exact same size, the exact same vertical, they could even have the exact same kind of people working with them, they're going to work differently. That's just human nature. That's just the way it rolls, And the fact is, when you deal with software development, you're usually stuck with 2 options, 2 paradigms. You either buy or you build. If you buy an off-the-shelf product, you're stuck with it. Tough. If it doesn't apply to you, too bad. Just figure it out, work around it. And if you build, it's going to be okay for a little while. Someone's going to come in, study your processes, build a tailor-made solution to you. But one thing we have to remember is processes deal with people. People change. When people change, processes change. And when you have technology that's built to support those processes, those things kind of need to evolve as well. So that's usually where it becomes really messy very quickly. And that's exactly what we hope to address.
So let me ask you a little bit, kind of going from there and kind of transitioning into something similar. So I'm kind of curious what Joget is built on. What other open source libraries are you using? What might I need to have installed on a server in order to enable Joget to work correctly?
Well, actually, Joget's built, if you download the installer for Joget, it's fully fledged, fully functional. If you wanted to do a source build yourself, we have an entire Maven POM setup. So, if you're familiar with Maven, you really shouldn't have to worry about stuff like that. I think if you have to start worrying about how to make those builds, then we probably didn't do a very good job. So basically, if it's a source build, just check out the source, and if you have Maven set up, it'll download whatever library dependencies that you have. And we do make use of a number of open source technologies, a huge number of open source technologies, really. Anything from Apache Commons to the Hibernate suite and so on and so forth. But if you just plan to use the product without actually going through the codes, download it, install it, and it works.
And I'm assuming there's packages available, correct, for the major distributions, Ubuntu, Red Hat, etc.?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay. And then what license, actually, I don't think we've talked about this yet, what license are you actually using for Joget?
Joget's running on a GPL.
Okay, GPL 2, 3?
GPL 2, I believe.
Okay. And was there a particular reason you chose that license versus other licenses?
Well, we started thinking about this quite a ways back, and back when we started talking about this, I think the GPL 3 came up not too long ago. We felt that the license was still a little immature. We really wanted to see someone else do it and see what the implications are first, but there wasn't a strong sense of whether it should be version 2 or version 3, but it was important first, for it to be GPL. We wanted to make sure that we drive community adoption and that, the evolution of the product is something that's forefront in our mind. And, being open source, we really hope that we would have a lot of participation, a lot of contributions as far as community engagement and involvement was concerned. So that's primarily why we went with GPL. As far as the version 2 or version 3, it was just a matter of timing, really.
Yeah, and then what about community involvement? Do you get a lot of community contributions back to Joget itself? And we talked about plugins and things, but I'm just kind of curious what kind of contributions are coming back from the community. Do you do you work together with the community quite often to work on problems and things?
Absolutely, we do. Right now, we are growing at quite a good rate, actually. We've overachieved our numbers by a good 50% for the first year. We're seeing a 5x growth. We're in the fourth month of our second year. We're actually looking at a 10 times growth. It's a little ambitious, but I'm fairly certain that we can do it. To be perfectly honest, right now, the majority of our adopters tend to be consumer of the technology rather than contributors of it. There has been contribution, and we're certainly very appreciative of it. Someone's actually, again, I didn't ask for permission, so I better not mention names, but we have some of our adopters who actually came up and contributed a client, that basically pings you whenever you have something in your inbox, which is really cool, for a web technology, and we certainly appreciate those things. But as far as actual source check-ins, it's been fairly limited. The majority of them have been in form of bug fixes. Again, we really, really do appreciate those contributions as they come. I'm hoping to drive it further, though.
Yeah, so I mean, bug fixes have been the main thing. I mean, so where else do you need help? Do you need help documentation? Do you need help in coding? I mean, this is your chance to kind of call out to the community and ask for help. So what particularly would you like to see a little bit more community involvement in?
Well, the thing is, I believe actually that, if you are developing software in any form or fashion, it's a fervent hope that this would give some sort of value to you. So take it, use it, build something cool on it. And if you do build something cool on it, there's always a marketplace option for you to either monetize or give it away for free. And I hope that sparks a viral movement for a lot of people to contribute anything from plugins to full-fledged applications. Code contributions is always very, very well received. Bug fixes. Just basically be a part of the community. And I think the majority of our community engagement and our community contribution now comes in the form of translation. We've always envisioned this to be a global game, and it certainly makes sense globally. So I can't remember how many languages we have going concurrently being translated right now. Tiansun will probably be able to give you a better number on that.
Yeah.
I'm just reminded, I don't know why I didn't bring this up earlier, but I'm just reminded that one of my other clients, a long-term client of actually mine, brought me in a few years ago because the center organization had attended some sort of fancy presentation about, all your workflows ought to be automated by one central system, and we have exactly the system for you. Oh, sure, you'll have to install Oracle, and all of your existing systems will have to interface to this somehow using this really ugly RPC call that has undocumented fields and fields that don't work because we haven't finished the implementation yet. But by the way, I think this will solve it for you across your organization. We're talking an organization that has multiple departments and multiple levels of technical skill and lots, unfortunately, it was tied a little bit into the government, so it had some government approval for some of the loops and things, and it was just horrid. So I remember that at some point in the work I was doing for them, and they weren't paying me cheap. These are people that had enough money to pay me my normal rate. And I know that they, at some point, I sat down with my main contact there, and I said, we're just going to have to use this whole workflow management thing as a dumb box, where all we do is we do all the code on our side in Perl to identify the steps and figure out the workflow and then move things forward there. And we're just going to use the one update function that says update status. And so we got rid of all of their workflow stuff and we're using this giant Oracle installation with this really crappy interface. Can I say crappy on TV? I guess I can. With this really horrible interface. And it was and we did the whole thing in Perl. In fact, I was looking at various Perl workflow modules just to make sure that we could take care of the whole thing. And okay, so now why I'm reminded of that, well, first off, it sounds like the one thing that we kept looking at was, oh my God, if only we had the source code to the crappy Oracle-based program, we could at least fix the things that were broken in there.
Right.
The other thing is that what we were seeing is that we needed more malleability. We had workflows that the system didn't represent well, which is why we had to keep building it in and integrating it in with the Perl side, and then just using the update status function on the other side. Now, I've just given you the perfect opportunity to really sell Joget, knowing that there are problems like what I just said out there.
Right. I think the biggest issue that or the biggest challenge that you faced with was someone built a product and someone expected you to make the necessary changes to make sure that product basically played a key role in, whatever infrastructure and whatever deployment that you have. And that's precisely what we didn't want to do. That's exactly why we went with the plugin architecture in place. We made no assumptions on your environment and what you might possibly need. So if halfway along the line using the product, you decide that this portion of the product doesn't necessarily apply, it's not good enough, we don't want users to be managed this way, we need application plugins to do something else, write a plugin, plug it in. That's all it takes.
Wow. And the other thing I see is that, even the way the head of the organization was selling this new, workflow management system to us in the individual departments, it was like, okay, well, it should be flexible enough to handle most of the processes that you're using already. And they just had no awareness of how complex some of the processes were. Like, this thing gets started in this, by this person, but it has to go to one of these three people to approve that level of it. And if it's greater than $10,000, it's got to go to this guy as well.
Right.
And it was just all these complex things that were not modeled very well. Now, I was looking at some of the demos, and you had this nice little, if then else decision, and I saw that you could do some fairly complex math in there with variables being carried along through the tactic and stuff. Do you think I could model most of my workflows directly with that, or would I have to go to a plugin fairly quickly?
Well, it really depends on the complexity. The situation that you've just brought up is actually not uncommon, and for stuff like that you should be able to do it fairly quickly. But I'll give you another scenario. We have an implementation where it's I can't really say what it is, but someone in the public will basically submit an application of a certain sort, and someone will need to process that application. Now, depending on the fields, certain values, the niche, the verticals of that application, it will go to a certain department. And then who exactly in that department needs to, process that really depends on the workload. Who's doing a lot, who's not doing enough, and all that kind of stuff. Okay, those kind of rules probably apply only to that one organization. No one else is going to use it. But that's exactly where the plugin architecture comes in. Just build that plugin that makes sense to your business and plug it into Joget.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, I'm sure we've only scratched the surface of how well this would fit in, but I'm actually pretty excited about it now. I'm actually starting to think that there's a couple clients I could recommend this to already, which is nice, because that's how I make my money, is taking something like this and adopting it for my clients. So you've inspired me. I want to go look some more at this. Like everything that we do here on FLOSS Weekly, I always want to go out and now go install it right away and go play with it. But it definitely has been nice. Jensen, I know we haven't talked much to you, but is there any last words you want to put into the show before we have to let you go?
Yeah. Just now, Michael hasn't mentioned something about the translation, but I think I would like to thank quite a number of contributors who have contributed to our translations. Because at the moment now, we have already got about 96% of completion for Korean language, and it's going quite well for Spanish as well. So if, let's say, anyone who would like to travel in Spanish, I will really appreciate that.
Oh, that's really good, because I know that the Spanish market is so often overlooked, especially also Spanish, and I'd have to possibly also say Brazilian Portuguese, because that's since it's such a dialect of Portuguese that you have to end up having some special translations for there. But that's a huge market in South America. South America is really kicking in terms of open source development and stuff, especially the initiatives that a lot of the governments have had to say, we're getting rid of everything that's Windows and Microsoft, and we're going to all go open source. Sounds like Joget actually would be perfect for government, doing all the filing and paperwork and everything, making it electronic. And so with that, on that note, Michael, any last things you want to put in here?
Well, the only thing I have to say is, wow, I had no idea you were allowed to mention names. This interview would have been a lot more fun if I were aware of that from the start. But otherwise...
we can do whatever content we want. It's our freaking show.
Yeah, well, I'm an open source guy, so you know where my loyalty lies. But generally, yeah, that's basically what we're after. We believe that we can make we can evoke a paradigm change as far as application development is concerned, web application development anyway. And I truly believe that if you are building any kind of software, this would give value to you. So take it, use it. The only thing we ask is build something cool with it and come back once in a while. We do some really cool stuff, and we love to share that with you.
One last question too. I mean, you might have covered this while I was busy looking at my notes, but community. You have do you have like IRC channels, and do you have any physical get-togethers yet? Are you up to that level, or are you still just all virtual?
Most of it's virtual. I'm hoping that I can have my first hackathon here in the Bay Area. Well, my email isn't on that little bottom line thingy, but it's michael@joget.org.
Mm-hmm.
I will buy drinks for the first 10 people who emails me and tells me that they want to come for the hackathon.
Oh wow, that's a great offer.
This might actually be a really, really bad idea because I was actually in Palo Alto. I just came for a talk in Stanford, so I was just sitting down minding my own business. I was at a Starbucks, I remember, and I was just messing around with some code, and I happened to tweet. I was in Starbucks. I was using their Starbucks hash, I believe. I'm in Starbucks, so anyone who comes up to the guy wearing the Joget T-shirt, buy you coffee. I think in a space of 45 minutes, I was broke. So I'm not sure that was a good idea.
Well, that just says something about the price of Starbucks coffee, I think.
Oh, ouch.
And did I read somewhere? No, you're going to kill me if this is wrong. Are you giving a presentation at OSCON this year?
I hope to give a presentation at OSCON. I've actually submitted a proposal. I hope to also be speaking in Drupal's WordCamp in Stanford sometime in early April. So it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm really not a very slide Excel person, so whatever presentation usually deals with demos and code. So just come along and just give it a look.
That's the best kind. That's definitely the best kind, yes. Well, I appreciate you guys both coming on today and all the technical difficulty that we had to go through to get this on. I just about knocked over my Diet Coke cup over here. That's why that look was immediately a glance to the side for those who are watching the video. I appreciate you guys coming on and talking about the product, and I'm sure that we'll be you'll get a lot more interest there. And like I said, I'm probably going to download it now. I'm going to go play with it because you guys got me interested, and it sounds like something I can make money at. So that always works for me. So thanks a lot for being on the show, guys.
Thanks, fellas. We appreciate your time.
Great. So that was Michael Yap and Tiansu Law talking to us about the Joget Workflow project. So what do you think, Aaron?
Yeah, I think it's a pretty interesting project. I mean, certainly there's a lot of competition out there. I think more than you typically realize. There's a lot of commercial applications that even if they're not doing workflow specifically, they've got workflow built into the rest of their applications. So I think that this is good, though. I think it fills a niche. Just like all open source software, I think that this particular software fills a niche. Certainly, it's a niche that they had as they were talking about their history, something that was needed. And I really like the fact that there's plugins. I like the plugin architecture. I really think that that's makes it a very user-friendly ecosystem to use. And I think also the fact that it works really well for mobile applications and there's built-in support for mobile environments. I think that is really, really huge. So I think that those two things are really, really interesting.
Well, and as much as I was sort of, maybe, I hate to say this, but like poo-pooing, like having a customized editor for workflows, I think that actually, having watched the videos, I can see that for someone who's not like a dedicated full-time programmer, to be able to kind of say, I really want this to happen than this, or I want to know, where the decision, and be able to edit that, interact with that. This is more the kind of thing that, a technician can do rather than having to require the brains of a programmer. Now the technicians are going to be mad at me, but it's like a different level of knowledge and understanding. I mean, there's some really geeky stuff that we get to do that nobody else gets to do, and it's nice that the workflow could be managing that. And the importance of that is, I think, the malleability is that I don't know it's from time to time. It's clear to me that we're doing processes in an organization simply because that's the way the software was built 2 years ago to track the process. And we can't add an extra approval step without doing it sort of out of the system. And I like the idea that this is malleable, that like on Friday we can decide, oh no, this needs to also be approved by a second level manager, and have that deployed on Monday and not have to bring in a consultant for 3 weeks again to get that set up. So I'm really looking forward, if you listen to this show and you start implementing Joget, drop me some email, merlin@stonehenge.com, and let me know what inspired you and where you want to carry it in, and what you're doing with it, because I think this is really kind of an interesting project, and I hope it inspires a lot of people to do some more stuff. Having said all that, other things to send me email about are our upcoming guests. So let me get quickly to my upcoming guests list here. Unless you had anything else to say, Aaron, about the current project?
Well, only that the opinions expressed by Randall Schwartz about the crappy Oracle software do not necessarily reflect the views of Aaron Newcomb, who gets his paycheck from Oracle.
No. Please, let me distinguish Oracle, the software, from some guy's code written that uses Oracle.
There we go. That's good.
The crappy was completely applying to the some guy's code written to use Oracle. Oracle itself is a fine product. And as long as it pays your paycheck, I'm happy with that. He says very carefully, backpedaling just slightly.
Yes.
So next week, I've got Terrence Schreiber coming up from the 2600 Hertz project, which is a telephony, sort of top to bottom, asterisk, free switch, bunch of other stuff in it. I really don't know the scope of it yet, and I won't know the scope of it until he sends in his form on Sunday. And the following week, I've got Gilad Braca, who I've been looking forward to speaking to for a long time. I believe I bumped into him at one of the conferences, but he is one of the original developers, or one of the key developers in the Smalltalk world over the years, but he's just a really brilliant guy. And he's managed to generate something that looks a lot like Smalltalk, but has a lot more like zones of access and stuff. So it'd be great for sandboxing. It would be great for just understanding to really get rid of globals by replacing them all with regionals. He's pretty smart about all this stuff, and he's going to come in and talk about Newspeak, which is the language he's got that's sort of exploring all of those issues. So I'm really looking forward to that. I haven't booked Q2 yet. I know a couple weeks ago I said I'm going to start booking Q2. I've been lazy. No, sorry. I've been very, very busy. And therefore, I haven't gotten to Q2 yet, but I'm going to be sending out the emails this afternoon. So hopefully by next week's show, we'll hear a lot about Q2, and 13 more guests will line themselves up in some sort of nice formation coming in on the landing strip there. Let's see what else I got here. I'm going to be in LA for the next few weeks, so if you want to meet up with me, I'd be happy to hook up there at some random client down there that I may be working for. I think I plugged that clip way too much time in the video here. And so follow me on Twitter, twitter.com/Merlin, M-E-R-L-Y-N, to find out what I'm doing while I'm hanging out in LA, or to hook up with me, because I do read anybody who tweets at me. I read all those. Very happy people do that and say, oh, let's go out for dinner or something. I'm really happy with that. One of the things that's happened since the last time I talked is Starship Sofa, who I do podcasting for, do narration of science fiction stories, has released another of my pieces. This is a 55-minute piece. Actually, a guy, David Levine, I used to work with at Textronics many years ago, is also now a famous science fiction author, and I got to read one of his pieces, so it's really nice. It's called A Passion for Art. It's show number 177 of Starship Sofa at starshipsofa.com. And so I've narrated a number of pieces for them using the big blue Yeti mic here that you might see here if you're watching the video. And I'm very happy for people to go find out about Starship Sofa. I think it's a really, really great program. 2 hours each week with narrated stories, with interviews with some famous science fiction authors, news in the science fiction community, some short factual pieces from time to time. Yeah, go check out starshipsofa.com. That's a really, really good podcast. And, okay, so I've done all my plugging for today. Aaron, where can we find you, and what would you be doing?
Well, you can always go to thesourceshow.org, where late last night I released another episode of The Source. So this one is from Scale. So it's the podcast that I recorded down at Scale a couple of weekends ago, and finally got that out the door. So if you were not at Scale and you want to find out what Scale is about, go check it out. I got interviews with Lee Honeywell, who did one of the opening keynotes. She's involved with Hackerspaces. Also, Jane Silber, CEO of Canonical. Have an interview with her. So if you want to find out what Ubuntu was talking about at Scale and what their plans are for the future, go check that out, as well as one of the interesting thing I did on this episode, and it's at the end, actually, after I sign off, I did lightning interviews from the expo floor. So all these booths that were set up that you typically get a chance to walk around and talk to people, I did like 1-minute interviews with each, or not all of them, but as many as I could, all the community ones anyway, to just try to get them, help them out and get their message out, because that's really what it's all about. So go check that out at thesourceshow.org. And I'm going to see, if you're watching the live stream, I'm going to see if Alex will cue this up for us after we wrap up.
It's really admirable what you did there to actually go talk to the community guys, because I know that it's some of those I love to talk to, but they're not quite like something we would have for a full 45-minute show. So to have like little snippets at least of what they're doing and how they're working together, it's really good. And I know I think you did a pretty long piece if it's not already in your feed, it might be coming up soon on Linux Fund, right? You did a Linux Fund interview?
I didn't do it. It wasn't a long interview. That was one of the lightning interviews that we did.
Okay.
But yeah, it's in there. Also very interesting. I wish I had had time to do a longer interview with the LibreOffice folks. That was, if you watch their little spot that they did, they basically were thanking the community for all their support over the past few months. So yeah, it just gives everybody a little chance to kind of tell their story, what's important. Gives them a chance to mention local meetups or something like that. Something that people that didn't go to the conference might not necessarily have access to otherwise.
Well, I appreciate that. That's definitely a good thing for you to do. So without further ado, though, I see we're getting the time signal coming up at me in the corner of my ear here, so I better say, we'll just do what we normally say, which is we'll see you all next... Let's see if I can do it right here. We'll see you all again next time on FLOSS Weekly.